Hey, it's Lisa Haggis, and I'm so excited to welcome you to the Substantial Brand Spotlight series. In this series, I'm interviewing some incredible creatives and thought leaders who are doing things differently in their space. We're digging into the decisions that they've made along the way to build their brand and become known for something. And the first in the series is Janine Duff. She's a copywriter and a wordslinger who is also a fellow Canadian. So we talked all things about her business journey and copywriting and trends in the industry, as well as what to do when you don't know how to find your brand voice because you feel like you're not as cool and out there as some of the other businesses who you admire. So go ahead and dive right in. I know there are going to be some great takeaways. So yeah, I'd like to just kind of hear a little bit about where you started and some of the things that have happened along the way to get you where you are now.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So where I started, I was always that girl who kind of wanted to write and wanted to be an author one day and sell books and everything. And then, of course, adulthood hit and it was like, I need to pay bills. So I was like, how can I actually make a creative living? Like, I wanted to do what I loved, but I needed to make money at it. And I was really worried about finding something that would match the secure job I had at the time. And so I actually kind of self-taught. I come from a creative writing background and I did journalism for a bit. And then I just started teaching myself copywriting principles and took some courses. And then I started working with agencies. I put a portfolio together to start and then worked with agencies for a while. And then I was like, hey, I'm starting to make more now at this than I was at my old job. Like I could actually do this full time. So that's when I took my business full time, and now I get to work with people all over the world, which is incredible. And but I've also gone through a lot of different phases, I would say, in my business too.
Okay, cool. That's what I want to hear about. I want to hear about these phases.
Yeah, for sure. So I guess when I started out, I just saw myself more as a creative and a freelancer. I wasn't really thinking of myself as a business like most
Yeah.
creatives, right? And I basically just threw up a website. I wasn't even thinking of myself as a brand. I was just like, I'm a service provider. And I had this like laundry list of things I would write. It was really bad. Like everything under the sun. I had no specialty. And it was a lot harder getting clients that way.
hmm
So I finally realized I needed to brand myself and actually have something I stood for. And I needed to package my services, which is one of the number one things I did that totally changed my business was actually having, instead of a laundry list of things, actually having packages and coming up with a way to offer my services that was like really appealing to people.
hmm
And I would say now I went from that and now I see myself more too as a community builder. So I've started building my own community
Ah.
and so like I don't know, it's kind of more of a it used to be so simple and now I feel like I'm really coming into more of what I wanted to do to start with. Like I'm impacting more people and I'm not just a freelancer or service provider. Like I'm really helping my clients get their message out there and kind of by helping them, I'm impacting all of their clients too or their customers too and helping with that um, kind of collective impact.
Awesome. I love that it seems as though you've evolved by finding new titles for yourself.
Yeah.
I love this because there's a lot of, a lot of times people are like, I don't know what to call myself. And the common
Mhm.
advice is it doesn't matter. But I find that changing the title you give yourself in terms of it's directly related to your lane, right?
Mhm.
So if you see yourself as a coach or if you see yourself as an event planner, those are two completely different lanes, even though you might be the exact same person, and it could change the
Mhm.
game for you. So I love
Entirely.
that your story totally reflects that. You went from a freelancer to a copywriter. Now you're a community builder.
I think it's like a mindset thing too. So
Yeah.
when I started out, I was just kind of trading my time for money. And now I'm actually thinking of like, how am I going to build my business and scale my business? And like, how can I serve my community? So I'm thinking in different ways too. And actually like positioning myself more as an expert by having something I'm known for, packages that I'm known for too, and like a process that I'm known for. So it's
Mhm.
kind of like, you're kind of forgettable if you just have like a laundry list of things that you can do, or you don't really find a way to package your services. Like saying that you're just a business coach, I feel like you have to have a process or something you stand for that people can latch onto.
Mhm.
Otherwise, you're not going to build your business. For me, I struggled until I actually started seeing myself as like an expert at what I did. And I was like, what am I going to specialize in? And I started specializing specifically in web copy and brand voice development.
Mhm.
And that's what I've become known for, and specifically brand voice development. And if I didn't kind of actually put myself in that lane, because I think when you start out too, you just want to attract business. So you're like,
Yeah.
I just want to be for everybody.
Totally.
Yeah. So I was
Yeah.
like, I'm going to work with specific people. Like, I kind of got away from working with corporations, which I did a lot when I was in an agency. So I was just like working with women entrepreneurs, coaches, creatives, and consultants. And then I specialized in web copy, brand voice development. And then I was able to get known for that. And that really changed my business.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, so I want to talk a little more because you're using my language here about what you're known for.
Hmm.
And I know that people will be listening and they'll be saying, how did you figure out what you want to be known for? So
Yeah.
I'd be really curious to know what was kind of helpful to you when you were trying to narrow in on your lane and your specialty. You used that word as well in terms of like brand voice and web copy. Was it a no brainer or was it a bit of a process?
It was a process of actually figuring out what I liked and what I didn't like doing. So I just found that web copy was where my heart was at, and I got excited about those projects, and specifically working with the audience I was choosing, like women entrepreneurs, coaches, consultants, creatives. I got really excited about working on those projects. And anytime I had to work with, like, I don't know, a lawyer or something like that, I'd get really cranky and resentful and procrastinate. And so I felt like that's probably not where my focus should be. It was a process of figuring it out. And then the brand voice development was something I developed over time. Like my whole process, it was a slow process. That wasn't something I came out of the gates with. And
Mhm.
it took a few years to develop that process. And then I just saw it getting results for people and I kept fine tuning it. And then that's kind of why I got into that and got known for that. Was I just realized like I'm doing something that's working and it's getting these people results. And I kind
Mhm.
of just developed it over time. So that's how that kind of came to be.
Cool. I love that you're talking about results because I feel like most of my clients are service providers. Most
Hmm.
of yours are too. And when you're a service provider, the way that you're going to find your process is always by trying to get better results for your clients, right?
Yeah.
So you landed on copywriting and then realized that the voice is the secret weapon for
Hmm.
better web copy. And so
Hmm.
you got really good at that too. Okay, so the other thing that you brought up that was really interesting was how much of a difference packaging your services has
Hmm.
made. I'd love to hear, what do you think was the key to packaging your services up the right way?
Working with a lot of clients. But, like, that's kinda how you figure things out, working with a lot of people, figuring out what their needs are and what problems you're trying to solve for them and how you can do that in the best way, and I tested out different packages, and I
Mhm.
found that there were certain things that just were replicated, right, that most people needed, and I was just kind of doing the same package already over and over again for people when they had a website. So that way, I decided to package my services by I've basically created a signature package, and I will custom quote, but that's all I sell on my website. And also creating a brand voice style guide, because then it was another way to highlight my expertise with brand voice. And it's
Yeah.
something that not all copywriters offer. So having the brand voice guide really helps them with like carrying that voice we had developed for them through on their own. And so that was like a huge selling feature and a big part of my package too.
Awesome. Cool. So it sounds like you're just really good at listening and noticing like your clients' reactions to things and responses. Is there
Mhm.
anything that you would do like to record that or seek that kind of feedback from clients as you were going along?
Yeah, after I work with a client, I always kind of have a wrap up process where I do a feedback survey with them so that I can really understand what they were. And questions I ask are like, what were you struggling with before? And what kind of feelings did you have after? And results did you get after? What kind of hesitations did you have about working with a copywriter, which is always really interesting.
Yeah.
That's like one of the best questions you can ask on a survey is like, what were the hesitations you had to working with a graphic designer or copywriter? It's so
Yeah,
interesting the obstacles and objections you find there that you can
definitely.
immediately put in your copy.
Yes.
But yeah, and then also asking them about the process itself and what they felt was missing, or if there was anything missing, and what they loved about it the most, so that I could kind of refine from there.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm curious, like, was anything surprising for you? Like, when you got into the minds of your clients, have you learned anything that way that you were surprised by or that you wouldn't have known?
What I find that I learned, and I don't know how this much this applies to what we are just talking about, but I found that confidence is a huge factor. So it's not
Mm,
like they were worried about their actual, if they're using the right tricks and formulas and the right copywriting principles. They did want results, but they were missing the confidence. So you think like when people get in touch with me and I would ask them what their problem was, why they wanted to hire me, and what they were struggling with before, you always think like they're going to say they wanted more bookings, or they want to make more money, or they wanted their copy to convert higher. And that's what you would imagine would be the number one pain point. But most of them were just saying that they felt like their message wasn't coming through, they didn't have confidence in it, and they felt like they just sounded like everyone else. And that was actually their number one struggle. It wasn't the stuff I thought it was going to be.
awesome. And
Yeah.
so, like, I definitely noticed those themes coming through on your website now.
Mhm,
So
mhm.
you got in there and you like met them where they're at. And
Yes.
so let's talk a little bit about that sounding the same as everybody else.
Mhm.
So, how did you find your own voice? I think that's a great way to kind of get a peek into your voice process
Mhm.
and also kind of continue on this theme of your own journey.
Yeah. So I always tell people your voice, it's something that evolves over time. So I think a lot of people think it's going to be something they find and then that's it. And it's actually like an ongoing process, an ongoing journey. So my voice started out very young, a lot more kind of, I would say, bold and sassy and that kind of stuff. I was also trying to attract a different clientele then. And that was 8 years ago. And now I'm actually really loving working with women who are more, I would say, in their 30s, 40s, and they're more established, and they want to have a voice that matches them and their personality, but they also want something that's a little bit more refined and strategic. So like my voice has changed and evolved over time too. I'm not quite as out there as I was
Yeah.
initially. So I think it's going to depend on who you are as a person, because everybody evolves. Your business is going to evolve, and your client will probably evolve over time, who your ideal client is. And the other thing I always tell people too is when you're writing the first time, just get your thoughts out there. Don't try and sound a certain way. You just want to
Mhm.
get your message out there. And then you can go back and edit for personality. So, like, you can add those tidbits in later when you see certain phrases, and you can add some fun words or something that you would maybe say in your casual conversation when you're talking with friends, the kind of language you use. But some people just focus too much on that from the first draft, and that's where they get stuck.
Right. Yeah, definitely. Or I think that a lot of times people are like, you've got voices of other entrepreneurs in your head, and
Mhm.
you're trying to kind of live up to that. Or like, what I hear all of the time is like, what do I do if I'm not naturally really outgoing, or really, one of those kind of out there voices? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yes. I like this topic because a lot of people come to
Yeah.
me and they think that personality means bold and loud and
Yeah.
sassy, or cussing and all these different things, because that's kind of the messaging that's out there sometimes. And I was trying to explain to people that personality is not necessarily those things. It might be who you are, but if it's
Yes.
not, it's just about showing who you are. And that means having a perspective, having an opinion, like you stand for something, sharing your values and your interests. And maybe you're really spiritual and intuitive and you have kind of like a poetic writing style. But then there's other people who might be really loud and bold and sassy. But I think where people get tripped up is they think that that out there style means personality, and if you're not that, then you're boring, and that's not the case at all. It's just
Yes.
learning how to express things in your own way and having your own perspectives and ideas to share, and it's not about being the loudest or the sassiest or anything like that.
Awesome. I love it. What I believe is that there are different sides to your
Oh yeah.
personality, right? We're not just
Mhm.
one thing.
No.
And there's room for those different sides of your personality and
Mhm.
your brand, but you do kind of want to lead with
Mhm.
one and maybe a backup player. And so
Yeah.
how did you choose what to lead with when you're going through that?
Yeah. I guess I would say is when you're going through the branding process, one of the most important questions you have to ask yourself is, how do I want my audience to feel when they're interacting with my brand?
Yeah.
So, whether that's on social media or when they land on your website or just going through your client process or something, you have to kind of think about how you actually want them to feel when they're interacting with your brand. So maybe you want them to feel really motivated. Maybe you want them to laugh. Maybe you want them to feel a sense of belonging or like they can relate to you and that kind of thing. And I definitely wanted, in real life, I'm not a cool person or anything. I'm really quirky. I have a
I
bizarre
love
sense of
it.
humor and I'm not sophisticated. So it wasn't like I was going to have a refined voice or something. So, yeah, like I'm not fashionable or anything like that. So I wanted to lead with the side of myself that I felt like would relate to people because that's who I am. I can be kind of quirky and playful and silly, and I'm not like the really mature, sophisticated woman. That's not my style. So that's kind of like where that started and came through. But I don't know, like I think a lot of people when they put themselves out there, they don't realize that they're going to relate to people on the level that they do.
Yeah.
And sometimes what you think isn't important actually can be, or something you think is just normal is actually a point of connection for somebody else.
I love it. So one thing I want to say is that it's funny because like I look at your site and I think you come off as super cool. I'm like, this girl's so cool.
That's really funny.
It's
I
so
was the geek.
true.
I was totally the geek in high school.
But it's cool to be the geek now, right?
Yeah.
So like I what you just said, I feel it so highlights what I notice about people. It's that
Mhm.
whatever you naturally bring into the world in terms of your personality, you're gonna discount it.
Mhm.
Like you're gonna say, "Oh, but I'm just really quiet," or
Yeah.
"Oh, but I'm just, I'm pretty dorky and geeky," and like other people who don't have those qualities or like to the same degree, they're looking at you and they're like, "Oh, why couldn't I be more like that?" Like I every time I think it's so fascinating. So I'm looking at you thinking you're the cool kid. And
It's so true though. Like with my current website, I felt kind of out of place almost with it because I noticed a lot of the trends going on and certain colors and, like you see a lot of pinks and teals and
Yeah.
branding now and that kind of stuff. And that's not really who, like, the pink and the girly feminine design
Yeah.
isn't really who I am. I have a girly side, but I'm not, like I said, I'm not that sophisticated woman or glamorous woman. So me having like blues and greens and like just the pops of red it felt risky to me just because of what I was seeing going on in the online space. And I didn't see a lot of that kind of
Mhm.
that color palette and that feeling, and it's had a great response, but that was just
Right.
me listening to my intuition and being like, no, this is what feels right, and not following the trends. And it's hard sometimes, but one of the things too is to figure out who you are, what you want to bring to the forefront, is also to ask both close friends and family and
Mhm.
clients like what makes you unique, or when they think about you, what words would they use to describe you. And you might find that they're saying things like quirky or like weird in a good way. or but like maybe they might say stuff like woo woo, or those kind of words that they start connecting with you and your identity, and that's a good
Right.
place to start. It's not necessarily where you finish, but it's a good part of that process to start there and figure out, how do other people see me, how are other people relating to me, and asking even your clients, like, why did you choose me? What was it about me or my brand that made you really want to work with me? And that's where you really discover what is attracting people to you. And that's the stuff you want to play up.
Yeah. So what are some of the words that like you use to kind of guide your brand style and voice? And I'd also be curious to know what kind of words, you got when you reached out and asked for feedback from people.
Yeah. So I did reach out to people, and I always ask my clients, like, one of the things I ask is why you chose me. And so the words I usually get are playful. Some people say cheeky, definitely like relatable or down to earth, kind of like girl next door friendly sort of thing, and warm. And sometimes people say witty. But yeah, those are kind of like the words that were coming up. And I get fresh and energetic a lot too.
Yeah.
So those words were coming up a lot, and then I was like, okay, I really need to play that up with my branding even more than I already am. So
I think like it's totally about discovering what's there and then playing it up, like you said.
mhm,
And I love that you pointed out that like even like your color choices felt a little scary to you. I
mhm.
feel as though that's going to be really helpful for people to know, because I don't think people expect this process to be scary, right?
Okay.
They think that if it's authentic, then it'll feel right, and then there won't be any like anxiety or jitters around it.
Mhm.
And I feel like in my role is often to be there to kind of help them pass that fear. um, but I think the fact that the fear is there and that it's normal, that's so important for people to hear, because it's even scarier when you're being authentic.
Oh yeah. Because then you feel like you're truly putting yourself out there and you're allowing people in, and you're worried about judgment, right? Of course. And any branding process too can be scary because it's sort of like you're making a statement. You're saying, this is who I am, here I am, and you can't hide behind anything else then, because it's you, it's just
Yeah.
you. And you're also committing to something, which is hard, I think, for some people, because you have to. I work with a lot of clients who it's like, okay, you need to make a commitment to your messaging and who you're targeting. And once you ask them to kind of really double down on that stuff, it gets scary because there's a lot of people who just want to appeal to everyone. They want
Yeah.
everyone to like them. And part of the process is with branding or copywriting is to appeal and to attract the right people, you need to repel the wrong people. So there has to be both an attraction and a way to repel those people, right? So you can't make everyone happy, but there's
Mhm.
always that fear there, especially if they're doing things differently.
So what about in your own journey? Like, in terms of who you repel and who you attract. What parts of your brand do you find you get the strongest reaction to?
Yeah, so there's two things. One thing that I stand for would be really selling without the sleaze by just being true to who you are and connecting with people, which is received in a positive way because people don't want to sell in a way that feels sleazy and they're worried about sounding braggy and that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
So, selling through attracting people by who you are and your personality, using that as your competitive advantage is what I kind of preach. The thing that probably gets me some flack is I speak out against templates a lot.
Hmm.
So I understand there's a time and a place for them. If you're just starting out and you might have to buy a template website or that kind of thing. But I have a lot of people ask me for templates with writing copy. I can give you kind of like starting points or foundations, but you're going to really blend in if you're using a template and you're not thinking about how your words are going to be tailored to your audience and who you are. Because even just about pages, they are structured so differently depending on the person's story. Like, am I leading with a story? Am I leading with their expertise? It totally depends on their business and their clientele and who they are. So I speak out against shortcuts a lot, and I don't think people like that. Like, I think you're better off learning the key puzzle pieces that need to go into branding and learning how to customize them for yourself. But just
Mhm.
giving you some kind of a script that's like a fill in the blank is not going to get you results.
I love
Yeah.
that. It can be really hard to kind of choose a bad guy, like in terms of your
Yeah.
brand story. And I often like that is very, very often a piece of getting clear on what you stand for, or I often say like choosing your battle.
Yeah.
um, and yeah, like if you're a really nice person, then it can feel really unnatural to kind of hate on something. And when
Yes.
you find that though, like that's how you start to position your approach as the better approach.
Yeah, for sure. And I think part of it is too, for me, the reason I speak out against it is because it's a lot of the formulas are getting pretty stale. And the sales funnels, you know what's coming, and people are getting
Yeah.
bored. And so
Yeah.
yeah, you
Yeah,
can't.
let's talk about that. Let's talk about people getting bored, because I feel as though everything is overdone. Like what I struggle with and what I find, it's very hard to feel like you're bringing anything fresh to the table in terms of like not so much ideas. I feel like there's always new ways to bring ideas, but in terms of things like voice, you know?
Mhm.
And so, what do you say to somebody who feels like they are going to sound like everybody else because they do sound like everybody else? Do you know what I mean?
Well, so I find brand voice is one piece of the puzzle for one thing. So there
Mhm,
are things too, like having a unique process and
mhm.
having a unique story. So it's not just your voice that's differentiating you. You obviously have your own background and history that you're bringing to the table that's different than other people. You're not going to have the same story or background. And also like your values and the message you're trying to share. Even if your brand voice is similar to somebody, it's going to be different in that way. So there are different factors that come together. So you have to understand there's nobody else who is you. So even if there's somebody else who has like a sassy voice and you do too, they don't
Yeah.
have the same experience. They don't have the same background or story. They might not have the same values or message, and they might not have the same ideal client.
But I
So
love what you're saying about how there are so many things that make you different. And I think that that's really important to know because,
mhm.
and like obviously that's a big piece of what I do as well. I find people so afraid to sound like other people to the point where
Mm,
there can be like a word or a phrase that really, really
yeah,
matters to them. And they shy away from it because they're like, oh, everybody's saying that.
yeah,
And what I always say is like, well, like take it back, you know?
say it more, say it differently, say it better. Because if it
Mhm.
really matters to you, why would you let somebody else be the person who owns and represents that idea?
Mhm. And there's that whole saying that I like too about there's no original ideas anymore.
Yeah.
And, like how you express and share your ideas can be original, but you're not the first person who's probably invented that thing. Or there are going to be a lot of people doing the same thing as you, but you are going to bring you to the table, and that's your competitive advantage. So I think it's important to not get so caught up in trying to sound original that you don't put out anything, because I've seen a lot of people fall into that trap. They just
Yeah.
shut down because they're worried about the fact that I'm not different than anybody else, I'm just the same. And they don't really go through that process too of, I've had a lot of different websites with a lot of different copy, and I still tinker with it, and
Yeah.
it's an evolution, and I feel like a lot of people are trying to get it perfect the first time, and just
Mm.
that's where they get tripped up.
And I think it's so important not to rely on all of the bells and whistles. Like there are people who are using the fact that they don't have a professional copywriter doing their copy as an excuse to not go out there and sell their offers, or they're using the fact that they don't have a website or they don't have a logo, and so I love, like Seth Godin says, do the hard stuff first,
Mhm.
but so many of us want to do the easy stuff first, and all
Mhm.
of like getting a website up is the fun stuff. It's
Yeah.
it's actually the easy stuff.
Yeah, I think a lot of that stuff's a distraction.
Yeah.
So, I think people are distracting themselves from doing the really hard work, and they also do it at the wrong time. So, the website stuff and hiring a copywriter and all of that, you can do it when you're starting out, but I think it's a bad investment. You need to work with some of your people first, like the kind of people you want to serve, and learn more about them and do some of your research and get to know your brand messaging before you invest in going like really professional with all that stuff.
Right. And I do think that a lot of people genuinely believe that you have to have a website before you can get a client. And I'm curious, did you have a website before you got your first client?
No. Oh my gosh. So, my first client came from handing out crappy brochures in my neighborhood. And I got my first client that way. And then there were a couple people I knew, friends I had, who knew somebody else who needed help. And that was like just word of mouth. That's how I got my first few clients. And then I contacted some agencies, like graphic design agencies, because they're always looking for other contractors to work with. And so I just let them see some of the work I'd done, sent a resume, and that's how I got some of my initial work. I didn't have a fancy website up or anything.
I love that. Yeah, I didn't have a website either for my first year and a half, I think.
Mhm.
But I will say, I do think that there are some fields that are harder to explain the value of than others. And copywriting is actually pretty easy to explain the value of. So I do find, depending on the complexity and understanding of
Mhm.
what you sell, the clarity around your message and the need to truly articulate it varies, right?
Mhm.
So I called myself a marketing strategist back then. Um, and I ended up getting copywriting jobs because a marketing strategist was just so vague. And so I got I did not get anywhere near the kind of jobs that were a fit for me. And
Yeah.
so I would kind of say there's a bit of a scale between how complex and confusing your
Mhm.
offer and your expertise is, and how soon you need to nail that messaging piece.
Yes.
Do you still work with bricks and mortar shops?
Yeah, I have done some work with people like that, but I think a lot of them are kind of intersecting now. So
Mhm.
even if they have like a brick and mortar store or studio, they still have online services or shops or things, right?
Yeah.
So I'm seeing huge intersections. It's everything's going online now, but that's the beauty of
Right.
it.
Yeah, I mean, it's so true. And I'm also seeing a trend where things that were all online are starting to come offline again.
Yes, I love that though. I think that it's necessary. I think because things have gone so much online, there's that craving to get back to that
Yeah.
connection.
It's always a swing of a pendulum, right?
Yeah.
And like, I'm always fascinated to see where, like, when the pendulum starts swinging back, and it definitely is around like a lot of things, really. Like, I'm seeing these, like, the solopreneur thing is like people are sick of it. They
Mhm.
want connection, they want partnerships, they're going back to jobs. And I'm just really seeing that anything offline is becoming an advantage, versus having your entire business online and virtual. Well, what about in your own business? Like, do you feel yourself anticipating a certain kind of change for your business, or is there anything that you're like craving?
Um, so yeah, I've been playing with the idea of for my own offerings, I guess one thing I want to do is be able to offer workshops that are short and easy to implement, like
Mhm.
not a huge ginormous course, something that's really
Yes.
actionable that takes you a couple hours to go through, kind of like a webinar style thing. And then there's like a workbook or implementation and a community of some sort to give you some extra support there, because I think there's people need help with that implementation part, and if it's too big and overwhelming like these huge courses, that's where the
Yeah.
problem comes in. So just giving them these bite-sized workshops, like how to write your about page in a day or something like that,
Yes.
doing stuff like that. And me personally, I am craving more in-person connection. So I've actually I'm kind of an introvert. So I struggle with going to networking events and
Uh-huh.
conferences because I they exhaust me if I'm there for like a whole weekend, just because my energy gets down from that. But I'm trying to start researching different conferences and figuring out there's like one that I really want to go to, because I do miss kind of when I had my job before, my normal job,
Yeah.
having that interaction with like a team to bounce ideas off of, and just having people that you could connect with and problem solve with and, lean on and that kind of thing. So I definitely want to do that. Looking at trying to hire more help, I think.
Yeah.
um, Yeah, what else? I definitely want to try Pinterest. So I haven't really been doing much with
Really?
Pinterest. Yeah, but I've heard that I'm learning more about that, because before I was kind of focused on all social media. And now I'm trying to really see this is what's worked for my audience or my website or what I'm getting results from. And this is what I want to focus on. So there's a couple platforms that I don't really get much traction on. I don't like them. And I'm like, I'm going to stop trying to do everything and just focus on like Facebook and Pinterest, because that's where like I get the most connection from and I get my
Yeah.
people from. So I'm just going to like focus on that.
Yeah. What would you say are the most important things you've done to grow your business too?
So I would say three things as of the last couple of years that were big for me. One was starting my community, my free community, because um, doing I do like live Q&As in there and little workshops, and I always, if I'm trying something new, like a new offer or service, I release it in there first.
Mm,
And it's so easy for me to connect and engage with people in there because it's more of a conversation versus when people are just going on my website. So having people engaged in that community and connecting with me on a daily basis, when I release something new, I get a really amazing response from it. And I get to do like writing challenges in there. Sometimes I do free challenges. And yeah, so having the copywriting squad, which is what it's called, is that community is one of the best things I've done for growing my audience and just connecting effortlessly with people. Cause it's not salesy at all. It's just like we're showing up together. People are posting stuff for feedback. I'm giving little mini trainings, and it's unbelievable compared to traditional styles. It's just really engaging. So that's been working really well. The other thing is JV projects or webinars or things like that. So it's audience building is a very slow, painstaking task. And one of the fastest ways that you can grow your audience and get exposed to new people is by partnering with somebody else and, you know, doing a webinar or training or supporting each other, somehow shouting each other out on social media, and or having like a combined product or offer you put out. And that has been huge because they already have the trust of that audience, and then they're building that trust for you automatically by association. So that has been really good for me. And on a mindset level, I would say the last couple of years is the first time I've actually been in mastermind groups, and they're not paid. They're just ones that I put together with friends in the business community. So you don't have to, like, I know people say, oh God, mastermind 10K thing. And it's like, no, like you could do those if you want, but you could just get together with some people who are at the same level as you that you respect and you like. And so I have one that's just for copywriting and one that's a general business. Like we all have different specialties, businesses. And that's been huge for like mindset and accountability, because I didn't have that before. I'm just working at home by myself.
Yes.
So having people who are checking in on me, asking me for like updates on stuff that I said I was going to do, that's been really helpful too.
Right. So I love that everything that you just mentioned doesn't really require you to be all of the places on social media or churning out content all of the time or dishing out a ton of money to like get in front of people or have expensive kind of business coaching or anything like that. And I love that like your strategies are very similar to mine in that they're like nice and introvert friendly and
introvert friendly. I like that.
Well, yeah, because you have your community and you can deliver value to them, and it doesn't like it feels like a really cozy, intimate space, right? And I am curious though, what would you say has helped you grow that community?
Yeah, so some of it is really strategic, and other stuff was surprise. I guess. So obviously the word of mouth referrals has helped, but the biggest thing is when I first opened it, I kicked it off with a free challenge. And so part of the free writing challenge, it was like a Find Your Brand Voice challenge, and it was just 5 days. But part of it was I was delivering live trainings in the community at the same time, and people could post stuff for feedback. So that was my first spike when I first opened it, that I got a lot of people in there. And the other thing is literally putting the link everywhere on my website or like in my email signature. People don't think about that kind of thing, right? But I have like an announcement bar type thing on my website that draws attention to it. And I had a resources page with it on, and then like, my email signature. So having different places it shows up so that people know that you even have it, and doing stuff like if I do an Instagram story and I'm going to do a free training, I'm like, oh, I'm doing a free training on this today. Here's how you can get in. So just letting people know about it, because just having it there is not going to get people, right? And giving people a reason to go. So the other thing I've done is I do have prompts. Like a lot of people put prompts in their groups, and I do have that, but I switch it up too. And I also am making a concerted effort, despite the fact that I'm an introvert, to do like live trainings and get comfortable on video. So, and I keep them on a regular day and time. I try to do them on Wednesdays at 2 so that people kind of know what to expect more and they have a reason to go. So I would say those are some good ways to start if you want to build a community.
Awesome. I love that you pointed out like that you're forcing yourself to do video as an introvert. And like what popped into my head is I think it's even more important to do video when you're an introvert. And like, if you're an introvert perfectionist mix, then it's like your only option, really.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you're just going to freeze yourself in such like analysis paralysis and like trying to get it right. And also kind of going back to the talk about whether we're cool or not. I find like any kind of like too much personality in my writing doesn't feel natural to me. Like I have a pretty subtle kind of, I guess, goofiness or whatever. And I would never write in a goofy way, but I'll talk in a goofy way. And so I think, if you're a person who's a little reserved, you're probably going to be a lot more likable on video than if you're writing. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, and I know video is kind of the way things are going. Like a lot of people feel, especially I think it's important in the online world because it's not like you have a brick and mortar store where somebody can walk in, chat with you for a minute, kind of get a feel for you in the place. It's totally different. And trust is hard to build in the online world too. And I think that part of that is showing up on social media and kind of like having video to give people a sense that they're in your company, even though they aren't. Just because it's important for that connection.
So, what would you say are some of the things that people should get in line before they reach out to a copywriter?
Okay, so you definitely have to have kind of an idea of who you want to target. And a copywriter can help you flesh out some of that stuff, but you need to know who you want to work with to some extent. And you need to also have an idea of your products, services, offers, like what you're actually going to be offering, because otherwise it's pointless. You can't write a services page or work with me page without knowing or product description. And I think that you need to have the foundational brand pieces together. So copywriting actually comes before a web design. Like designers love having copy first so that they can build the design around the copy. But having your foundational brand work done, which is, when I say that, I don't mean necessarily like a logo, but kind of like what you do with people, where it's the messaging, the strategy, the positioning, that kind of stuff. That's the foundation. And then once you go to a copywriter with that, then they can do their work. They have what they need to do the best job that they can. One of the things we do is if you have data from your audience, so that could be like surveys, testimonials, if you have a community like a Facebook group or something and there's questions in there or things people are asking frequently, stuff like that, where you can copy and paste it and put it into a document where you can see what language people are using, then that's going to be so helpful to a copywriter. And if you're doing your own copy, then it's going to be very helpful to you, because part of what we do is piecing that together. And we put your spin on it, like your voice, your flavor on it, but we want to use a lot of the words that your audience is using it and describe it the same way they describe it.
Perfect. Awesome. And like, what's the number one mistake that you see that you can help people avoid by telling them right now not to do it?
Okay, I know. Not having a call to action.
Oh, yes. Good.
Yes. This is like one of the biggest ones I see. So you go on somebody's site, and when somebody goes on your website, you want the copy to flow. And so you want to understand where you want them to go. So from the homepage, where do you want them to go from there? If it's to your about page to read your story or about your approach, what do you want them to do after that? Do you want them to view your services? And like, you need to have a call to action on each page, but only one, except for your homepage. You might have like a freebie that you're offering or something like that. But don't have like a gazillion calls to action on every page, because then it gets confusing. So you kind of want to guide your reader through your website. And naturally, it's usually from about home to about to your services, and then whatever the hiring step is the first step. So if it's booking a free call or filling out your contact form or something like that. So just make sure that you don't just end the page. Like, have a call to action. Like, what do they do next?
I love it. So that reminds me of one of the things that you said on your site, which I just want to touch on. You talk about the difference between a conversion copywriter and a creative copywriter. And I would just love to hear a little bit about the role of each of those. And because I don't think people realize there are different kinds of like copywriters, there's different kinds of content / copy / whatever. And you're not always going to find it all in the same place. So I'd love if you just gave a quick rundown of like, who are these people and when do you need them?
No, I love that you brought that up because I think that's a huge misunderstanding in the industry. So, not all copywriters are created equal. Like they all have different backgrounds and experience. There's many different types. There's also copywriters who technically are more like content marketers, and all they do is write blog posts and social media, and that's it. And then there's more like direct sales type of copywriters. So yeah, there are a lot of different types. And a conversion copywriter is just focused primarily on getting you that actual conversion of a browser into a buyer, basically, or to convert somehow to complete an action, whether that's to sign up for your list, to buy something that you are selling. They're totally focused on that. And so it's very technical. It's very strategic. It's mostly research based, and they use copywriting principles that are very well known. Some are more complicated than others, but there are some great conversion copywriters, but sometimes where they fall flat is the voice part, right? The personality part. And so they're good at getting the sale, but some people don't love it because it can be more formulaic, and sometimes it does come across a little bit more salesy just by the nature of it. And then creative copywriters who usually are more like the English major types, where they can make anything sound really amazing or beautiful or like really fun, and they have a lot of the personality part, but they don't necessarily understand copywriting principles or how to sell, so they might be too far the other way. So finding somebody who can bring both of those worlds together, if you care about personality and brand voice, is important. And also finding somebody. Now, copywriters do adapt to your voice. I always say this, like, that's our job, is to sound like you, not to sound like us. But you are obviously going to be so much further ahead if you choose somebody who already kind of reflects what you're looking for.
Yes.
So, like, don't go for somebody who's really bold and crazy and out there if you are more quiet and that's not who you are and that's not what you're looking for. And if you're looking for, like, really corporate, professional, reserved, conservative writing, don't go for somebody like that, right? So pick somebody, if you're like really spiritual and feminine, then pick somebody who has kind of like a girly poetic voice naturally. And if they don't have that on their website, you can also see if they've worked with people where they have adapted to that type of voice, or in their portfolio. But if they don't have a strong example of that, because that's not their thing, and that's okay, like they're
exactly,
voice, right? Then choose somebody who sort of sounds a little bit more like the style you're going for, because they're going to get better results for you and they're more likely to nail it.
Yeah, definitely. I totally agree with that. Like, I think it goes back to what I was saying about how we all have different sides of our personality. So we're not one dimensional, and we could authentically talk in a few different ways. And I think that your copywriter can authentically write in a range of voices. But if you're asking them to do a complete 180, there's no way it's going to sound authentic. It's kind of like if you were commissioning a piece of artwork, you would look at their style and you would choose somebody who already has a style that you want, and then you commission your own original piece so that it's everything you want. But you would never go to somebody who's never done that style at all.
Exactly.
And what's the most important thing to find in a copywriter?
Ooh. I think the most important thing would be their process, because like having a really good process, because you need to know that they're going to take that time with you in that process to actually figure out exactly what you want and figure out your voice and do the research with your audience. So if you have a copywriter who just gets you to fill out a questionnaire and then they write from there, that to me represents a significant gap.
Mm.
Because if I didn't talk to my clients, like I have a 1 hour call with them after the questionnaire, and I ask them for some audience research, or I do some of that too. And if I didn't go through that process, then I know that the copy I gave them would not be as compelling, and it wouldn't fit them. So I
Mhm.
think finding a copywriter, I would say two things is that, and then obviously finding a copywriter that reflects your style is really important, because you are never going to be satisfied with the result if you pick a copywriter who does not reflect the style you are looking for. Because I will say from personal experience that I have had people come to me and they're more corporate,
Yeah.
and they've been like very insistent about working with me, even though I was kind of like, I don't know if I'm a great fit for this. And now I've gotten a lot better at saying no. But once upon a time where I would be more swayed by that. And then they say, like, no, because I really want something that's more fun and fresh and approachable. And it's like, okay.
Yeah.
And they're never satisfied because it's too scared to go there, and they just want
Okay.
it to still sound corporate. And there's a disconnect there.
I think what you just said is so like an awesome way to kind of wrap up the conversation, because what you've alluded to here is like when you go through this process, it's important to brand for who you truly are, not who you wish you were.
Yes.
Right? So they wanted you to help them take on a new persona, but that's never what you're supposed to be doing. Like
No.
this is not a situation where it's like fake it till you make it.
No.
Like you're not going to change who you are. Like
No.
you're going to grow, you're going to evolve, you're going to stretch. So it's important to know the difference between owning and like faking or
Yeah.
changing. And I think that that's an awesome point that you just brought that up.
Totally. And also remember who your audience is as well. Because I think a lot of people, they just see what their idol's doing and they want to replicate that. And think about your business and your personality, because what they are doing might work for them, but it's not necessarily going to work for you if your audience is completely different, or your business model is totally different, your brand's totally different, right?
Yeah.
So you have to keep that in mind too, because brand voice is important. Like, it's important to showcase your personality, but you also have to intersect that with who your audience is and what appeals to them as well.